Well, 50 years of service is being celebrated today, and it's certainly my honor to have served you, the people of Aroostook County and state of Maine, for 43 of those years. I'd like to talk today a little bit about advocacy, because that's the core of why this organization exists. In 1994 in Fort Fairfield, in the spring of that year, I think it was in April, the Aroostook River flooded, and all of Main Street had flooded. There were two large housing projects for the elderly, Northern House, the old Plymouth Hotel, and Fields Lane. Fields Lane was completely wiped out. The bottom floor of the Northern House, those people, there were about 6 feet of water in those apartments, so anybody on that bottom floor, they were displaced, and a number of homes along the river, on the other side of the river, were owned by older people, and those homes were destroyed. So there was a pretty large displacement of more than 100 older people in Fort Fairfield. When the federal disaster was declared, it was about 5 days after the flooding, and FEMA arrived in town about a week after the actual flood. The waters had receded, but the mess was there, and people certainly couldn't move back into housing that was destroyed. And FEMA activated their Disaster Assistance Center, and the Agency on Aging, meaning myself and Brenda Barker, who was Director of Advocacy Services then, and the outreach worker, Chris Wilcox, we went to the FEMA Disaster Center and offered our services. They politely kind of brushed us off. But a few days later, I got the call that maybe you can assist because people are having difficulty with the process of applying for assistance. So Chris and Brenda and I went back over, and we saw why people were having difficulty. The package of paperwork was about that thick, and most of it was totally irrelevant to what these people needed and were asking for. And the reason being, it was a small business administration loan application. And when people saw the word loan on there, that automatically turned them off. Well, fact of the matter is that was the process, and it is a process. In fact, you hear today how difficult the FEMA process is to actually get help. Well, it should be better, but that was the way it was in 1994. So we were able to set up a help desk right in the FEMA Center, and it became just an automatic thing. Older person come in looking for help, and they got referred over to the help desk that the Agency on Aging had, and our outreach worker, Chris, would be there to help people through that process. So we learned a lot from that, and we were able to assist more than 100 people in Fort Fairfield get some help in recovering from that flood. Well, you jump ahead about 13 years, and we had a major flood in Fort Kent. And other valley towns were also affected by that flood, but Fort Kent pretty severely. In fact, there was a senior housing project, I think it was 24 units, right down by the Fish River. And the Fish River, as it began to rise, it was in the nighttime, and the fire department began to evacuate seniors out of that housing about 2:30 in the morning. Just think what would happen to you, 2:30 in the morning, you're roused out of bed, and you put your feet on the floor, and then water's up to above your ankles. And by the time they got people out of there, water was rising pretty quickly, and some people come out of there with water up to their waist. Only thing that they were able to carry with them is the clothes that they were wearing. There was another senior housing project, the old convent, right across from the Catholic Church in Fort Kent, and the people in the basement apartments and the first floor apartments, they were affected and had to evacuate too. Well, they had to evacuate the entire buildings. So we had a number of displaced older people from that flood. There were about 17 older people that had houses along the river. They lost their homes too. It took about 5 days for the federal disaster declaration to be made, and FEMA arrived in town about a week after the flood, and began to set up shop at the town office and in the council chambers there. And again, the Agency on Aging, being myself, Brenda Barker, and our outreach worker in the Fort Kent area was Judy Winchester. We were there as FEMA was setting up. And again, they're pretty busy, and we offered our services, explained who we were, and kind of get brushed aside again. We'll call you if we need you. And I noticed that this little old man had come into the town office, and they directed him into the council chambers where FEMA was just setting up. And one of the FEMA people went to him, and they sat down at the table there in the room. And I was watching and quite closely, and this fellow was speaking French, and the FEMA person was trying to help, but you could tell there was just no communication happening there. And when the FEMA man handed this fellow a packet, you could see in the man's face that things weren't going anywhere. And I turned to Judy and I said, Judy, go over there and see if you can help out. So Judy went over. Judy was very fluent in French, began talking with the man and began to talk also with the FEMA person. And you could see the magic that began to happen. The FEMA people made the decision at that point that, yeah, this Agency on Aging may be able to help us out here, at least on the communication side. So that was good. Another major task that FEMA had was trying to identify who the people were that were affected by this flood and how did they get in touch with them. And our outreach worker, again, Judy Winchester, she knew the people who had been displaced. She knew, for the most part, where they were. They weren't at a Red Cross shelter. Most of them were with family members scattered throughout the valley and in some cases beyond the valley. And we were able to make the contact with those people that had been displaced who were affected by the flood. And Judy worked very diligently for about 8 months, side by side with the FEMA people, helping in doing the application for assistance. And Judy did an excellent job. I can't impress on folks how good a job she did. Because, imagine you being displaced and not really having anything, and, how do you start to rebuild your life? It takes money, and it takes money to rebuild property, homes and that kind of thing. And Judy was instrumental in helping more than 100 people recover from that flooding. In fact, the Agency on Aging was cited by FEMA. It was about a year and a half after the flood for the work that we did helping people throughout the valley. And Judy Winchester was personally cited for providing about $1.2 million in FEMA assistance. Judy did the applications for people, followed up on those applications, did all of the documentation that was necessary to help people get that help. So again, that was about $1.2 million right into the pocketbooks of older people, and that made a big difference in their lives and ability to recover from that flood. So, those are some examples of how important advocacy is, both on a public policy level and on an individual level. This agency has been essential in the past. We've made a big difference in the quality of life for the people that we've served. We did that now for 50 years, and I won't be around to see, how things turn out in another 50 years. But knowing board members here, the staff of the agency, the volunteers that are here, I know you're going to continue to be successful and you're going to build on the legacy of this agency. So again, thank you for the opportunity to have served for 43 years, and I wish you a happy 50th anniversary.